My name is Melissa A. Johnson, and I was the same age I am now when the man I was supposed to marry looked me in the eyes 2 weeks before our wedding and calmly told me he thought he had been settling. 200 invitations sat neatly stacked across our dining table. Each envelope represented a promise, a future, a family, a life that was supposed to begin in 14 days. I was carefully addressing the final invitations, while Ethan stood beside the living room window. For nearly 3 days he had barely spoken. He wandered through our apartment, carrying his phone like it weighed 100 pounds. At first, I blamed wedding stress. Planning a ceremony for 200 guests wasn't exactly relaxing. To help him, I'd taken over almost every remaining responsibility. I confirmed the band, finalized the menu with the caterer, reviewed seating charts, called the florist twice. I kept telling myself that once everything settled down, he would smile again. Finally, I placed my pen on the table. "Ethan, talk to me." He didn't answer immediately. The city lights reflected against the window beside him. "It's not the wedding." Something about the way he said those 4 words made my stomach tighten. "Then what is it?" He slowly turned around. His eyes met mine, but somehow they didn't. They seemed fixed somewhere behind me. "I've been having doubts." The words landed quietly, almost gently, which somehow made them hurt even more. "Doubts?" I repeated. "We just finished our final fitting. We picked our first dance. We tasted cakes 3 days ago." "Doubts about what?" He inhaled deeply. Chloe came back. The room instantly felt colder. Chloe, his ex-girlfriend, the woman he'd always described as exciting, complicated, and completely in his past. The woman who had disappeared years earlier. "You saw her?" I asked carefully. She called. "We met for coffee. It was supposed to be closure." He rubbed both hands together nervously. "But seeing her again? It made me realize something." "What?" I whispered. He looked around the apartment, at the invitations, at our engagement photos, at the wedding binder sitting open beside me. "What we have. It's comfortable. It's safe. It's predictable." Every sentence felt like another crack spreading across the floor beneath my feet. "Melissa, you're thoughtful, reliable. You'll make someone an incredible wife." Then he smiled. Not at me, at the memory inside his own head. "But Chloe, everything with her feels alive. It's unpredictable. It's exciting. The feelings never disappeared." I stared at him, unable to believe what I was hearing. "So, you had coffee. You remembered old feelings. And now?" His voice barely rose above a whisper. "I think I've been settling." Silence filled the apartment. I looked around at everything we'd built together. The furniture we'd chosen, the savings account we'd spent years building, the wedding plans, the future. None of it mattered anymore. "You want to leave?" I said quietly. "For the woman who walked away from you years ago." His expression hardened slightly. "Please don't make her sound like that. I'm trying to be honest. I can't marry you when my heart belongs somewhere else." There it was. Not cruelty, not anger, just devastating certainty. He waited for me to cry, to argue, to beg him to reconsider. Instead, I simply nodded. "Okay." Confusion flashed across his face. "Okay? You've made your choice." I answered calmly. "I won't make it harder." He hesitated. "We still have a lot to discuss. The apartment, the wedding, our families. Those are logistics." I replied. "You ended the relationship. I'll handle the rest." Without another word, I walked into the bedroom, closed the door. Several minutes later, I heard a suitcase rolling across the floor. Then, the apartment door quietly closed. I sat alone in the darkness until sunrise. When morning finally arrived, the heartbreak hadn't disappeared. It had simply transformed into something colder, something clearer. I brewed a cup of coffee, opened my laptop, loaded the wedding planning spreadsheet, created a brand new document. Its title contained only 2 words: cancellation list. The wedding was over. Now all that remained was making reality catch up with the decision Ethan had already made. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the empty space where Ethan had slept only hours earlier. When daylight finally crept through the curtains, the grief hadn't disappeared. It had simply become organized. I made coffee, opened my laptop, pulled up the master wedding spreadsheet I'd spent nearly a year building. Every vendor, every payment, every contract, everything neatly color-coded. I opened a blank page beside it. At the top, I typed 2 words: cancellation list. The wedding no longer existed. The paperwork simply needed to catch up. My first call went to the venue. Good morning, Riverside Gardens. This is Melissa Johnson. I need to cancel my wedding reservation scheduled for the 19th. The woman on the other end immediately recognized my name. Oh, I'm so sorry. Would you like to reschedule instead? No. A complete cancellation. I understand. I'll lose the deposit. There was a long pause. It was a very large deposit. I understand. Please email written confirmation. I thanked her politely, then ended the call. The second call went to the caterer, then the florist, then the photographer, then the bakery, then the band. Every conversation sounded almost identical. Every person offered sympathy. Every person asked whether I wanted more time. Every person reminded me how much money I'd lose. None of it mattered. One by one, pieces of the future disappeared. The 3-tier vanilla wedding cake, the floral arch, the string quartet, the photographer who was supposed to capture our first kiss as husband and wife. Gone. Thousands of dollars vanished in less than 3 hours. Oddly, the money hurt less than hearing strangers say, "I'm so sorry." By late morning, my inbox filled with PDFs, cancellation confirmation, reservation canceled, deposit non-refundable. I downloaded every file, merged them into one document, opened a new email. To Ethan. Subject: wedding arrangements. The message itself contained only one sentence: all wedding arrangements have been canceled. Attached are the confirmations. Below it, I typed my name, Melissa. Nothing else. No accusations. No questions. No begging. I pressed send, then packed one suitcase. Clothes, laptop, passport, important documents. I didn't touch anything that belonged to Ethan. I didn't look through old photographs. I didn't read old letters. I simply walked away. By early afternoon, I had checked into a small extended stay hotel across town. The room was plain. White walls, generic furniture, a narrow bed. It was perfect. There were no memories inside it. Hours later, I turned my phone back on. The screen exploded. 23 missed calls, 14 text messages, 7 voicemails, every single one from Ethan. The first message arrived only minutes after my email. Melissa, what did you do? 5 minutes later. Call me. Then, you canceled everything? My parents are calling me. We need to discuss this like adults. I quietly opened the first voicemail. His voice no longer sounded calm. Melissa, what the hell? Do you realize how much money you just threw away? My mom's freaking out. You can't just cancel everything without talking to me. You need to call everyone back. We'll figure something out. The voicemail ended abruptly. I deleted it, then deleted every unread message. Without opening a single one, the silence returned. And somehow, it felt cleaner than any explanation he could possibly offer. The first week alone wasn't dramatic. It was simply empty. Every morning I woke up forgetting for one brief second. Then reality returned, not as heartbreak, as fact. Ethan had chosen someone else. Whenever I checked my phone, new messages waited. At first they were angry, then frustrated, then strangely reasonable. We need to divide the apartment. Can we please talk? You're making this harder than it needs to be. One message almost made me laugh. Chloe says avoiding conversations is emotionally immature. I stared at the sentence, then quietly deleted it. Apparently, the woman who helped destroy our relationship had become his relationship advisor. By the second week, I forced myself outside. Ryan, my oldest friend, called every evening until I finally answered. "You've hidden long enough," he said. "My place. Tonight. No excuses." I went. His apartment looked exactly the same as always. Video game posters, pizza boxes, a cluttered coffee table. Somehow, it felt comforting. He handed me a bottle of water, so what actually happened? I told him everything. The pacing, the confession, Chloe, the word, settling. Ryan stared at me for several seconds. He actually said that? I nodded. 2 weeks before the wedding. And then you canceled everything? Every single vendor. A slow smile crossed his face. Honestly, that's the most emotionally organized breakup I've ever heard. It wasn't revenge. I know. You simply accepted his decision. Exactly. Ryan leaned back. You know what the best part is? What? You didn't compete. You let him own his choice. His words stayed with me. Over the following weeks, he helped me find a small apartment. 1 bedroom. Sunny windows. Quiet neighborhood. I bought only what I needed. A bed, a sofa, a dining table. Everything inside belonged entirely to me. Several weeks later, I returned once to our old apartment to collect the final boxes I'd left behind. Ryan insisted on coming. When Ethan opened the door, he wasn't alone. Chloe stood behind him. She smiled awkwardly. I didn't. I simply nodded politely. Melissa, Ethan said softly. Ethan. Neither of us moved. Ryan quietly picked up the first box. We'll be quick. While loading my belongings into the hallway, I heard Ethan whisper something to Chloe. She answered quietly before stepping outside to wait. Neither of them followed me. When I carried the final box toward the elevator, Ethan spoke again. You look. He hesitated. Good. Thank you, I answered. Nothing more. No questions, no bitterness, no memories. As the elevator doors slowly closed, I looked at him one final time. You made your decision, I said calmly. My future isn't part of it anymore. The doors closed. Ryan looked over at me. That might have been the coldest goodbye I've ever witnessed. I smiled faintly. It wasn't cold. It was finished. For the first time since losing the wedding, I wasn't planning a ceremony anymore. I was planning a life. And somehow, that finally felt like something worth building. My new apartment slowly stopped feeling temporary. The blank walls filled with books I'd always wanted to own. The tiny balcony became my favorite place to drink coffee before work. Every Saturday morning, I joined a local hiking group. Every Wednesday evening, I attended a woodworking class I'd postponed for years because wedding planning had always come first. Little by little, my life stopped revolving around someone else's choices. The pain didn't disappear. It simply occupied less space. Then, the first rumor found me. Not because I went looking for it, because other people brought it to my door. A mutual friend named Megan sent me an email. She had always defended Ethan after the breakup. Seeing her name surprised me. The message was short. Melissa, I know I probably don't have the right to say anything, but I think you deserve to know the truth. Things between Ethan and Chloe aren't going well. He's miserable. I think we all judged you unfairly. I'm sorry. I stared at the screen. There was no satisfaction. No excitement. Just distance. It felt like reading about strangers. I quietly deleted the email. A week later, Ryan called. You busy? Not really. You might appreciate this. I doubt it. He laughed. I just saw Chloe's public social media. What about it? Looks like she and Ethan are already having problems. I wasn't interested. Ryan continued anyway. Apparently, he invested almost $15,000 into some business idea she convinced him to join. And the business never existed. I leaned back in my chair. That's unfortunate, Ryan laughed. That's all you've got? What else should I say? I spent months trying to stop thinking about them. I'm not starting again. He became quiet. You've changed. I had to. Another month passed. One evening my mother called. Her voice sounded unusually hesitant. I ran into Ethan's parents. I closed my laptop. Oh, they're devastated. I remained silent. They said Chloe emptied most of Ethan's savings, told him she was opening a recording studio, but there wasn't any studio. I listened without interruption. Then she disappeared, packed her things, blocked him. My mother sighed. Apparently she's gone. So is the money. Again, I felt nothing. No victory. No revenge. Just confirmation. I hope he figures things out, I said honestly. Mom sounded surprised. That's all. What else would you like me to say? She was quiet for several seconds. I thought maybe you'd be happy. No, I don't celebrate someone else's pain, but I'm not responsible for fixing it either. After hanging up, I stood on the balcony watching evening traffic drift below. Months earlier, news like that would have shattered me. Now, it barely disturbed the silence. The next attempt arrived unexpectedly. Voicemail. Unknown number. I almost deleted it without listening. Curiosity won. A woman's voice filled the speaker. Soft, carefully emotional. Melissa, this is Linda, Ethan's mother. I closed my eyes. I know I shouldn't be calling, but I'm asking as a mother. Ethan isn't okay. He knows he made the biggest mistake of his life. He realizes now what he threw away. We all make terrible decisions. Please, would you consider talking to him? Just once. For closure. You always had such a kind heart. I listened until the recording ended, then replayed one sentence. You always had such a kind heart. That sentence bothered me. Not because it was wrong. Because kindness had always been treated like unlimited access, like something everyone else could spend whenever they wanted. Ryan came over that evening carrying takeout. I played him the voicemail. He shook his head before it even finished. They're recruiting. I know. They don't actually want closure. They want relief. He pointed toward my apartment. You built this. He gestured around the room. The bookshelf. The workbench. The hiking boots by the door. The half-finished walnut jewelry box sitting on my table. Don't hand them the keys. I smiled. I wasn't planning to. Instead of replying, I simply deleted the voicemail. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. Still, the messages continued. An email from Ethan's sister. He's changed. A text from one of his cousins. Everyone deserves a second chance. Even a holiday greeting. Merry Christmas. I hope one day you'll forgive me. Each message followed the same pattern. Nobody asked how I had survived. Nobody asked what rebuilding my life had cost. Every conversation centered on Ethan's regret. Never my healing. Eventually, I stopped reading them altogether. Silence had become more valuable than explanations. One rainy Thursday evening, I returned home from woodworking class, carrying a small, handcrafted cherry box I'd finally finished. As I climbed the stairs toward my apartment, I noticed someone standing outside my door. A woman, head lowered, hands wrapped tightly around the strap of her purse. When she slowly looked up, my footsteps stopped. It was Chloe. Not Ethan. The woman who had convinced him to throw our future away. She looked exhausted, paler than I remembered. She opened her mouth. Melissa. I said nothing. She swallowed nervously. I know I shouldn't be here, but Ethan doesn't know I came. I need to tell you something. For the first time in months, the past had found my address. And somehow, I already knew this conversation wouldn't end the way she expected. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Rainwater dripped from Chloe's jacket onto the hallway floor. She looked nothing like the woman I'd briefly seen standing behind Ethan months earlier. The confidence was gone. So was the smug certainty that had surrounded their whirlwind reunion. I know I shouldn't be here, she repeated quietly. I agree, I answered. She swallowed hard. I only need 5 minutes. No. The word came naturally, not angrily, simply. No. She blinked. Please, I came because Ethan doesn't know the truth. I folded my arms. What truth? Her shoulders slumped. I lied to him. I lied about almost everything. I remained silent. She seemed relieved simply because I hadn't walked away. There wasn't any recording studio. I never had investors. The money. She lowered her eyes. I spent it. I wasn't surprised. I told myself I'd pay him back. I kept believing another opportunity would come. It never did, she laughed bitterly. I destroyed everything. No, I said calmly. You destroyed your relationship. He destroyed ours. She closed her eyes. You're right. I came because he still talks about you. He thinks if he could just explain everything, he could fix it. I almost smiled. There isn't anything left to fix. She nodded slowly. I know. I tried telling him. He won't listen. He keeps saying you'll understand once you hear his side. My side? I asked quietly. There was never another side. There was only his decision. Tears filled her eyes. I wish I'd never answered his call. I looked at her steadily. I don't. She frowned. If he hadn't chosen you, I would have spent my life wondering whether he truly wanted to marry me. Now I know. Silence settled between us. She whispered, I'm sorry. I believe you. She looked surprised. You do? Yes. But your apology doesn't change my life. It only changes yours. For several long seconds, she simply stared at me. Then she nodded once. I understand. She turned and slowly walked toward the elevator. I watched until the doors closed behind her. That chapter ended more quietly than I ever imagined. I thought it was finally over. 3 weeks later, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Normally I ignored them. Something made me answer. Melissa? Ethan. His voice sounded exhausted. I know you'll probably hang up. I should. I deserve that. He paused. Can I just say one thing? Against my better judgment, I remained silent. I was wrong. I know. I don't mean about Chloe. I mean about you. I called you predictable. I called our life safe. I thought excitement meant love. His voice cracked. I didn't realize peace was love. I leaned against my kitchen counter. He continued talking. I've replayed that night 1,000 times. The invitations, the apartment, the way you looked at me. I thought you'd fight for me. There it was. The sentence that explained everything. He hadn't just expected forgiveness. He had expected validation. You wanted me to convince you to stay, I said quietly. Yes, I thought. If you fought harder, it would prove something. I closed my eyes. So you tested me. No. You tested me, I interrupted. You expected me to compete with someone else for a wedding we'd already planned. I know. I was selfish. I was arrogant. I thought there would always be another chance, another long silence. Finally, he whispered, I still love you. No, I answered gently. You love the life you lost. They're different. He started crying, real crying, not loud, Not dramatic, just broken. I've never stopped regretting it. I believe you. You do? Yes. But regret isn't the same thing as accountability. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. You can't. Please. Just meet me once. Coffee. 10 minutes. I won't ask for anything else. I looked around my apartment. The bookshelf. The hiking backpack waiting by the door. The framed photographs from mountains I'd climbed over the past year. The woodworking projects lining the shelves. Every single piece represented a decision I'd made after he left. I already gave you my answer. When? The morning after you chose Chloe. I accepted your decision. You just didn't realize that acceptance works both ways. Silence. Then, so this is really it? It has been for a long time. I just caught up sooner than you did. His breathing became uneven. I don't know how to live with what I did, I answered honestly. That's something you'll have to learn. It isn't my responsibility anymore. I ended the call. Not because I was angry, because there was nothing left to say. I placed the phone face down, opened the balcony door. Cool evening air drifted inside. For the first time, the silence didn't feel like recovery. It simply felt like home. After I ended the call, I stood on my balcony for a long time. The city below carried on exactly as it had the day before. Cars passed. People laughed somewhere across the courtyard. A dog barked in the distance. The world hadn't stopped because one chapter of my life had finally closed. Mine hadn't either. The following morning, I left before sunrise for a weekend hiking trip with my group. The trail wound through pine forests, still covered in early morning mist a year earlier. I would have spent that Saturday tasting wedding cakes, arguing over seating charts, wondering whether Ethan preferred ivory napkins or white ones. Instead, I stood on a mountain overlook, watching sunlight spill across an entire valley. For the first time in a very long time. I didn't wonder what my life could have been. I appreciated what it had become. Ryan caught up beside me. You've got that look again. What look? The peaceful one. I smiled. I worked hard for it. You earned it. I think so. When we reached the summit, someone suggested taking a group photograph. As everyone gathered together, I realized something. Not one person standing beside me expected anything except my company. Nobody wanted money. Nobody wanted reassurance. Nobody wanted me to sacrifice myself for their happiness. They simply wanted me there. That realization meant more than I could explain. Months continued passing. Work became exciting again. The woodworking instructor eventually asked whether I'd consider helping beginners during evening classes. I accepted. Creating something with my own hands felt strangely symbolic. Broken pieces could become beautiful again. Not by pretending they had never cracked, by rebuilding them carefully. One afternoon, my mother stopped by, unexpectedly. This time, she brought homemade cookies. Actually homemade. We sat together on the balcony drinking tea. She looked around my apartment. You've made this place yours. I have. She smiled softly. I worried after everything happened. I know. I wasn't sure whether you'd ever trust anyone again. I looked toward the bookshelf Ethan had never seen, toward the framed hiking photographs, toward the little cherry wood jewelry box sitting proudly on the table. I still trust people. I just trust myself first now. She nodded slowly. I wish someone had taught me that sooner. Before leaving, she hesitated. I heard Ethan moved away. I hadn't. She looked surprised. You really don't keep up with him? No, I don't need to. That answer seemed to satisfy both of us. Another year passed. Life settled into something beautifully ordinary. Then one afternoon, while cleaning out an old storage box, I found a wedding invitation, one of the originals. Cream-colored paper, elegant lettering, my name beside Ethan's. For several seconds I simply stared at it. The old version of me would have cried. Maybe wondered what might have happened if Chloe had never returned. Instead, I smiled gently, folded the invitation once, then placed it into the recycling bin. Not because that chapter didn't matter, because it had already taught me everything I needed to learn. Looking back now, people sometimes ask whether I regret canceling the wedding, whether I regret walking away without fighting for the man I loved. The answer always surprises them. No, because love shouldn't require competition. The moment someone asks you to compete with another person for a place in their heart, they've already made their decision. They simply want someone else to carry the guilt. Ethan thought I was safe, predictable, comfortable. He mistook consistency for boredom. He confused chaos with passion. By the time he understood the difference, the woman he left behind no longer existed. In her place stood someone stronger, someone quieter, someone who finally understood her own worth. My name is Melissa A. Johnson. 2 weeks before our wedding, the man I loved told me he had been settling because his ex-girlfriend had come back into his life. The next morning, I canceled every wedding vendor, accepted every lost deposit, packed one suitcase, and quietly disappeared. A year later, he stood outside my door asking for another chance. But by then, I wasn't the woman he'd left. I had built a life where peace mattered more than promises. And that's the funny thing about second chances. Sometimes, the person who deserves one is yourself.